He bit it back, not the creature, the man. Private Kepler sat there on the floor of the drop shuttle, blood running from 3 deep puncture wounds in his forearm, chewing on what looked like the scorched thigh of the thing that had attacked him. Sergeant Miles gagged. "Are you seriously eating that thing?" Kepler shrugged, mouth full. "Tastes like alligator." Across from them, the Threxian medic blinked his compound eyes and hissed something into his translator. "That bite is terminal. You have less than 1 standard hour." Kepler swallowed, wiped his mouth with the mark of his injured hand, and wanted toward the twitching corpse of the creature he'd just torn into. "Tell that to him." The medic chittered in alarm, rescanning the wound. The poison from the fang beast was already supposed to be moving through the human's bloodstream, coagulating organs, disrupting neuron chains, liquefying stomach linings. It had done so in every other known case. Always fatal. Always. Yet Kepler didn't seem to be slowing down. He took another bite from the beast's thigh, chewed thoughtfully, and raised an eyebrow at the medic. "Maybe your poison's defective." The Threxian recoiled as if struck. Sergeant Miles was less entertained. "Kepler, stop antagonizing the alien. He's trying to help." Kepler scoffed. "Help?" He said, "I've got an hour. That's not help. That's a weather forecast." The inside of the shuttle was tense. The rest of the squad was either dead or unconscious. Miles was bleeding from a shoulder wound. Kepler, alive and seemingly unfazed by the venom, was apparently sharing a meal with death and cracking jokes about it. The medic, whose name no one could pronounce, had gone rigid, clutching his scanner like a priest holding a broken relic. The fang beast's body still steamed on the floor. Massive, scaled, and hideous, its jaws had opened wide enough to crush a man's torso. It had leapt from the tree canopy during their recon sweep, catching the squad off guard. 2 men were torn in half before anyone even drew a weapon. Kepler was the one who'd wrestled it down, screaming as its teeth sank into his arm, and then driven a knife into the back of its skull with such force that the handle snapped off. And now he was eating it. Miles pushed himself upright with a grunt, trying not to pass out from the blood loss. "Let's get something straight. You're saying the venom should have killed him already?" The medic chirped and handed over the scanner. Miles squinted at the readout. Toxic index 12.9. Fatality range 5.0 plus. Time to death estimation 43 minutes and decreasing. But Kepler's vitals were steady, pulse strong, oxygenation normal, brainwave activity unusually high. Miles handed it back. How is he still walking? Kepler belched and dropped the last gnawed chunk of beast meat. "I used to drink antifreeze for bets in high school. Maybe it did something." The Threxian staggered back to the wall and sat, staring at him with his multifaceted eyes. "You consume the flesh, while envenomated. This is not protocol." Neither was getting attacked by a 3-meter lizard with knives for teeth, but here we are. Kepler rotated his arm. The swelling had gone down. "Actually, I feel better." The medic hissed again. "That is not possible." Kepler grinned. "Well, maybe your scanner is broken." Miles rubbed his temple. "Can we focus? Command needs a report. Reinforcements aren't coming. You've got 15 minutes of battery on the beacon. We need a plan." Kepler wiped his hands on his pants and stood up. "I've got one. These things bleed and they're edible. Let's go find more." Miles stared at him. "That's not a plan. That's a death wish." "Look at me, Sarge." Kepler held up his arm. The wounds were scabbing already. Either I'm immune or this thing just jump-started my immune system like a kick to the nuts. The medic leaned forward again, scanning furiously. Regeneration rate increased. Cellular repair accelerating. White blood cell mutation detected. "You are not dying." "Nope." Kepler cracked his knuckles. "But I am getting hungry again." Miles didn't like the way Kepler looked when he said that, like a man halfway through figuring something out and halfway through daring the universe to prove him wrong. The medkit lay forgotten on the floor. The Threxian medic's clawed fingers twitched, unsure whether to restrain or study the human further. Kepler was pacing now, eyes scanning the dark jungle beyond the cracked shuttle hatch. His boots crunched over broken gear, shattered glass, and the still steaming remains of the fang beast. The venom doesn't kill me. The meat boosts recovery. And your scanner says my cell region's up. Miles grimaced. That doesn't mean we turn this into a buffet. It means we've got a weapon they don't understand yet. Kepler crouched beside the carcass and yanked free another chunk of meat. Whatever this thing is, venom, cells, proteins, our bodies react to it differently. The medic hissed in disbelief. Flesh consumption of venom-based predators is strongly discouraged under galactic biocodes. Forbidden even. Kepler shrugged, chewing. So is sticking forks in electrical sockets. But sometimes you learn things. Miles leaned back against the bulkhead and exhaled slowly. Let's suppose you're right. Suppose this thing did something to you, jumped your immune system, rewired your biology. What then? Kepler stood and rolled his shoulders. Then I'm going hunting. You're not leaving the shuttle, the medic said quickly, translator clicking. Exposure to multiple doses could cause an upgrade, Kepler cut in. Or maybe a meltdown. Only one way to find out. Miles looked from the corpse to Kepler, then to the jungle beyond. There were more out there, dozens, maybe hundreds. If even one more of them ambushed the shuttle, they were finished. And here stood a man who should be dying, asking for a second helping. The sergeant finally muttered, "Take a beacon with you." Kepler grinned. "I knew you liked me." "I don't," Miles replied flatly. "But if you come back alive, we'll need proof. And if you don't, well, we'll know." Kepler picked up a sidearm, checked the power cell, and strapped it to his thigh. The medic tried to object again, waving a sterilizer wand, but Kepler was already climbing out of the broken hatch. "Save the lectures. I'm already past the expiration date." The jungle was alive with sound. Chirps, low growls, the flutter of unseen wings. Shadows moved in the canopy, and the ground squelched underfoot with mud and ash. Kepler walked calmly, like he'd done this 1,000 times. Except he hadn't, not here. Not with this alien venom buzzing in his veins like a live wire. He didn't wait long. 30 meters from the crash site, something snapped to his right, then leapt. A smaller fanged beast this time, barely half the size of the last, but just as fast. It lunged for his throat. Kepler didn't dodge. He just braced. Teeth sank into his other arm. He roared, not in pain but in effort, and slammed the creature to the ground. It writhed, hissing and snapping. With his free hand, he drew the sidearm and fired 3 times into its chest. It jerked once, then went limp. The venom hit him harder this time. His vision blurred. Nausea crept in. His legs buckled, but only for a second. Then a heat surged through his chest. His hands trembled, then steadied. His heartbeat pounded in his ears, like a drum calling something ancient awake. He exhaled slowly. Still here. A green light blinked on the beacon. Data was transmitting. Vitals spiking, stabilizing. Body temperature up. Neural activity flaring. Back in the shuttle, the Threxian medic stared at the feed, mandibles parted in astonishment. He should be unconscious, in a coma. Instead, his metabolic rate has evolved. Miles leaned closer. Define evolved. Adapted to process the toxin. His blood is modifying it, digesting it, learning it. Each exposure is a new iteration. Miles watched the screen. So what happens if he keeps going? The medic's eyes glimmered. Either he becomes something new or something terrible. In the jungle, Kepler was already dragging the second beast toward a clearing, breathing heavier but steady. He was starting to feel the world differently now. Sounds were sharper. His muscles twitched with energy. His mind, calm, calculating, eager. He tore into the carcass with his teeth. The venom burned through him like liquid fire, and then cooled, then changed. Kepler didn't return until the second moon was rising. By then, the jungle near the shuttle had gone silent. He stepped through the foliage like a different man. His armor was torn, bloodied, barely hanging onto his frame. But his posture was upright, his steps light and purposeful. There were 3 new gashes across his chest, half-healed already. His eyes, once dull green, now shimmered faintly in the dark, reflecting light like a jungle predator. Slung over his shoulder were 2 more fanged beast corpses, dragged by their tails, both larger than the second kill. He dropped them at the edge of the clearing and looked up at Miles and the medic. "Figured we could use some more meat," he said. Miles took one look at him and swore under his breath. "What happened to your face?" Kepler tilted his head, amused. "What, this?" He touched his cheek. A long claw mark ran down from his temple to his jaw, but the skin around it had already sealed. "Didn't even bleed that much." The medic scanned him immediately, eyes darting between readings. "Your blood is now incompatible with baseline human biology. White cell morphology has changed. Nerve regeneration rate exceeds safe limits." "So I'm a little different," Kepler said, squatting beside the fresh kills. "Still me." Miles stepped forward, keeping his hand near his sidearm. "How many did you fight?" Kepler thought for a second. 5. Killed 3. The others ran." "They ran?" Miles echoed. "Yeah." Kepler began cutting into one of the corpses with a jagged shard of his broken knife. "Animals learn, fast. I think they smelled what I've become." The medic didn't speak. He was still watching the scanner. The vitals were stable, but wrong. Every number was within normal bounds, but the patterns were foreign. This wasn't a human who had survived a mutation. This was a human who had adopted it. Kepler looked up. "They're not hunting me anymore. They're avoiding me." Miles swallowed. "So what are you suggesting?" "I'm suggesting we stop hiding and use me to move out." The sergeant looked at the jungle. "You think they'll stay away?" "They already are." The medic spoke softly. "You are no longer prey." Kepler nodded. "Exactly." Silence settled over them. The jungle buzzed in the distance, but nothing approached. No low growls, no rustling movement. Just the occasional rustle of leaves far away, retreating instead of advancing. Miles folded his arms. "So we follow you, hope they see you as some kind of apex threat, and give us a pass?" "It's either that," Kepler said, tearing free another strip of meat, "or sit here till the beacon dies and the next wave finds our bones." The sergeant considered it. They'd lost too many already. Reinforcements were at least 36 hours out. With the power cells nearly drained, and the medic barely able to move in this gravity, their odds of surviving here without Kepler had dropped to nothing. Kepler, however, didn't wait. He stood, slung his rifle, and walked to the jungle's edge. Miles called after him. "Where are you going now?" "Trail markers," Kepler replied. "I want them to know I'm still out there." The next hour passed in silence. When Kepler returned, there were streaks of green blood on his hands, not his. He had marked trees, dragged carcasses, hung jaws from branches. A warning in the local language of fear. And it worked. For the first time since they crashed, the jungle gave them space. That night, Miles finally slept. The medic didn't. He spent it analyzing Kepler's samples, comparing scans, trying to understand what exactly had changed. The venom, he concluded, hadn't killed Kepler because it couldn't. The man's immune system had learned faster than expected. It had treated the toxin not as an invader, but as fuel. And now his body wasn't rejecting it at all. It was making it. By morning, Kepler's pupils were vertical slits. His skin had hardened slightly at the forearms. His reflexes had doubled. He hadn't slept. He didn't need to. Miles watched him move, expression unreadable. "You're not just surviving out here." "No," Kepler said. "I'm adapting." Kepler stood motionless in the center of the clearing, bare-chested and steaming in the morning light. The jungle had fallen silent again, not out of fear, but respect, or maybe recognition. His skin glinted faintly, the dermis beginning to take on the tough, scaled texture of the beasts he had consumed. His pulse was lower now, steadier than a machine. The Threxian medic watched from a distance, his scanner long since abandoned on the ground. Its readings no longer made sense. "Your biology is no longer human," the medic said, tone subdued but reverent. "You are rewriting your genome in real time. We have no record of this." Kepler didn't look back. "Maybe you need to update your records." The medic's mandibles twitched. "You are not simply immune. You are integrating, processing toxin as catalyst, creating new functions." Kepler finally turned, his eyes now glowing faintly under the heavy canopy's shadow. "What you're calling venom, maybe it's not meant to kill. Maybe it's a test, a filter, something ancient, looking for something stronger to carry it forward. Miles stepped forward, his voice hard. "And you think you're that carrier?" Kepler shrugged. "I didn't ask for it, but I survived it. And now it's not just in me, it's part of me." The silence lingered heavy. Then Miles looked to the medic. "We have a path out of here?" The medic clicked his wrist pad. "The lowlands beyond the ravine are clear. No more life signs within a kilometer. We should move." Kepler nodded and began walking. The others followed, careful to stay behind him. The Fang beasts had once ruled this section of jungle, but something had shifted. Their scent still lingered, but it was suppressed by something stronger. Something that now walked upright, wore human gear, and knew how to fire a plasma rifle. They moved for hours through terrain that had once been a death trap. Nothing approached. Even birds quieted when Kepler passed. It wasn't just that he had become something new, it was that everything else had noticed. They reached the ridge by mid-afternoon. The remains of another human dropship, older, long scavenged, lay twisted in vines below. Its beacon was dead, but the medic boosted its power using salvaged cells from their own. Within minutes, it was pulsing a signal strong enough to punch through the canopy and into orbit. Kepler sat at the edge of the ridge, eating another strip of roasted fang beast. His body no longer bore wounds. Even the scar on his face had faded. The jungle air barely made him sweat. Miles stood beside him, arms folded. "You're not planning on going back with us, are you?" Kepler didn't answer right away. He stared out into the valley, eyes scanning something unseen. "Back to what? A ship where they'll lock me up and take samples? Cut me open just to label it unknown?" Miles exhaled. "You think I'd let them do that?" "I think it won't be up to you." Kepler stood. "They'll want answers, and when they realize what I am, they'll want to make more." The medic approached slowly. "We can make a case for autonomy, for containment, not dissection. We are not savages." Kepler glanced down at his own hands. He flexed them, slow, deliberate. "I was a private with average scores, barely scraped through training. 2 weeks in this jungle, and I've become a myth." "Not a myth," the medic said quietly. "A bridge between biology and adaptation." "Same thing," Kepler muttered. "And bridges get walked on, used, until they collapse." Miles looked down at the broken terrain below. "So what then? You disappear? Join the jungle full time? Eat lizards and scare off the patrol drones?" Kepler smirked. "Maybe, or maybe I make this place mine. Whatever did this to me, whatever left those things behind, it wanted something to grow into the next thing. Not a victim, not a lab sample." The beacon pulsed behind them. The medic finally said, "There will be questions. Command will not accept your disappearance." "Then give them answers." Kepler walked to the medic and placed one blood-smeared sample case in his hands. Inside was a vial of his own altered blood, collected hours earlier. "Tell them the truth. Tell them I survived. Tell them the jungle changed me." Miles raised a brow. "And if they come looking?" Kepler stepped back into the trees. "Then they'll find out if they're ready." The medic stared at the sample. The liquid inside shimmered, iridescent, living, reactive. He looked up again, but Kepler had already vanished into the leaves. By the time the rescue shuttle arrived, there were only 2 men waiting. The Threxian reported the facts: human adaptive physiology, toxin inversion, regenerative transformation. Command would study the data for years, but they would never find Kepler again. Not because he was hiding, because now the jungle hid with him.